Today our guest is Linette Lopez, senior editor at Business Insider and adjunct professor at Columbia School of Journalism. And we want to talk about propaganda, and specifically about Russian propaganda. How effective is propaganda today when people have so many alternative sources of information?
Well, I think what we have to understand with RT is that they want to be one of those alternative sources, which is what makes it so compelling to a certain segment of American viewers and to Americans who feel like their view isn't being represented in mainstream media. That is totally a legitimate issue, and so RT takes advantage of that very real gap in American journalism to create something that is a hybrid between good journalism and propaganda. Now, you can say that, hey, there's good stuff on the network. Their coverage of Occupy Wall Street was stellar. Their coverage of race issues in the United States has been excellent. And you do get voices on RT that you wouldn't get elsewhere. But alongside that journalism is anti-American rhetoric, experts who are not really experts, stories that have an incredibly biased slant, and a lack of coverage about Russia or anything that's going on in Russia that could potentially look bad for Putin or the Kremlin.
So we can say that this state-sponsored Russia Today has some audience in the U.S. and Europe and in the West.
Absolutely. We definitely see that there is an engagement, especially on the internet, where we think RT has done an excellent job of really understanding distribution in a way that a lot of mainstream media outlets here in the States are still getting the hang of. And you can see that distribution in their Twitter feeds, which are in Spanish, in Arabic. You know, you can see people responding to them. One of our panelists earlier today pointed out that RT has an 80% penetration in Argentina, of all places. So we're really seeing this network go global.
So could we say that this effectiveness of Russia Today is due to the sources they have, because they have these immense sources, they are backed up by Russian government, or is it because of their high professionalism?
I mean, I think that RT has a lot of resources. It looks sleek. It looks very modern. The Kremlin is pouring money into it. But I think there's also truly an audience that is craving a more left point of view on the news and on the U.S. and on a multipolar world. This is a legitimate voice. It's a voice that could be harmful and sometimes spreads misinformation, but it's definitely a perspective that's out there. So that's something that we have to address as well, and not just say, RT, what a horrible propaganda channel, blah, blah, blah. No, I mean, they're addressing legitimate ideas and legitimate concerns, whether we like them or not.
You mentioned that this leftist audience. So does it mean that Russia Today and like in general Russian propaganda, they have a position, or they just addressing any topic that they think is vulnerable for the Western audience? For example, Russia Today is very anti-LGBT, which is not a leftist position, or like there are other concerns, and actually Russian ideology is pretty much right position.
Right, I agree with you there. You'll definitely see some of the some far right stuff on RT. But again, nothing is perfect. It is a Kremlin-backed channel. You're going to see some of that viewpoint. What I think is that they do realize that there is a gap in American media. We have a right-winged, very vibrant right-wing media space in the United States. What we don't is have a vibrant left-wing media space. And there's this was an audience that was just ripe for the picking. So,
Well, as I understand the U.S. media, there is very articulated position of two parties because the political candidates in Republican and Democratic Party, they develop these very comprehensible positions on different aspects. But probably the audience is in the U.S. is those people who don't vote, who don't follow Republican or Democratic position, those who are in the middle, like Green those who are for Green Party or for Constitutional Party, are not interested in mainstream U.S. politics.
I think there's certainly some truth to that. You could definitely see a lot of engagement around RT during the Occupy Wall Street protests, and that was one of those events that got a lot of people who felt marginalized from the U.S. political system out on the streets and getting them involved and getting them engaged. And I think, that was definitely an opportunity for RT, and the network took advantage of that. And I think that the network has also evolved in terms of being able to understand their audience and pinpoint exactly what it is that audience wants to hear. They've been getting to know the people who are, the people who would be warm to RT just the same way we have been getting to know them. And so I think that over time, the channel has definitely swerved in that direction and known who would be open to the content on it.
And the last question, but the one that is very interesting for me is it's not only Russians who work on Russia Today, but also Americans and Europeans. And what's their position? Why do you think they work there? Is it because they share the ideology of Kremlin today, or they have other motivations?
I think, journalism is a hard field, and getting a job is not the easiest thing in the world. RT, I know we've talked to a number of people during our work at Columbia who have worked or do work at the network. There are those who share RT's ideological mission and the Kremlin's ideological mission, and then there are those who kind of laser focus their vision and their stories on issues they think that matter, and also issues that fall within the framework of stories that make America look really stupid. If you can stay in that framework and you can find a beat, then RT will, as we've found, basically let you do what you want to do. Freedom for journalists is paramount. It's huge for us. We've found that the journalists who fall in that latter camp, who tend to go laser focus in on their stories, abdicate responsibility from everything else that is going on the network. They don't necessarily believe in the ideology of the network, but they allow themselves to continue working so that they can work on the stories that they believe are worthwhile and ignore the rest of the content on the network or on the website.
Thank you very much for your insights about Russian propaganda and
Thank you for having me.
researches on Russia Today.
Thanks.